All right. Give me a sec, y'all. I'm going to put some stuff. Oh, man. Why is everything shaking? All right. Now I got to put some tension on it, I guess. Okay. Maybe now it won't shake. What is up, everybody? I'm just putting stuff in the chat right now. YouTube finally let me come back. YouTube, get your stuff together. Damn you. All right. So there's the Discord. I believe I should put the mines in here as well. Damn, it's been a while since I've been on here. Been a hot minute. I'm just waiting for people to get in here. Just waiting for people to get in here. That's all. And in the meantime, I'm going to get all the links for y'all. All right. Give me a sec, y'all. I'm putting the links in here. Here, let me check back real quick. Okay, so there's nobody in the live stream yet, so I guess I'll wait a little while. In the meantime, we'll just give you all the links to all the stuffs. Let's see, Discord, mines. What else is there? I think there is something else. I'm not sure what though. I think there's something else, but I'm forgetting it. Yeah, I'm forgetting something. I don't know what, but I'm forgetting something. Okay. What am I forgetting? I can't think of nothing. Oh yeah, the join thing for YouTube. All right, that is all of the links. I'm just giving it a little hot minute before I do anything yet. Maybe I should move these blinds down because my lighting is terrible. I know. Okay, that doesn't seem to be cutting it. But y'all can barely see my face. I feel like that's not good. Oh, whatever. Whatever. YouTube's finally let me back after a while, so yeah. Brandon Peters. Hi, Brandon. What's up? Can you hear me? Let me know if y'all can hear me. I don't even know. But once we got a bunch of people in here, we're going to start doing a live stream. Okay, cool. Coolio. Um. So yeah, finally. So it turns out that YouTube took down a bunch of my stuff. So if you noticed, a bunch of stuff I tried to do the past couple of months has just disappeared, completely gone. And YouTube was like, this content has been removed for blah 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 blah, and community guideline arbitrary stuff we don't like. That's what YouTube did. So also they weren't letting me upload or do anything for like what's it been now, like a month more, something like that. So yeah, I have returned. Um, let's see. There's four people. Wait, seven, three. There's three people. I can't. Okay, so I've got 3 likes, which means there's only 3 people on the live stream. Okay, just making sure. Just making sure. All right, I'm gonna make a poll like I usually do. Have you shared this on all your social media and liked the live stream? Hoi. All right. All right. So, before I jump into some MrBallen, do me a favor. Do me a huge favor. Make sure you like the live stream. That's the only way the live stream is going to do anything at all, is with your power, because I have no power here. Um, Also, on top of that, if you feel so gracious, in the chat right now, there is a link so you can directly support the channel, and I don't have to worry about copyright. I don't have to worry about freaking trying to monetize anything, because it'll be you yourself directly supporting the channel, and I don't have to sell my soul to anybody to make sure the channel stays up. So do me a favor, go to the chat real quick, click that link, join the channel. It's a super low amount per month. And all right, so I think we'll have everybody we're going to have the entire time, whatever. Let's jump into this, shall we? So we have MrBallen, the worst kidnappers in Australia. Make sure y'all let me know right off the bat if you can actually hear MrBallen, okay? If you can't hear MrBallen in the chat, I'll readjust immediately and pause the video. So just let me know. All right, let's do this. Damn, I gotta scoot this way for. I gotta boot, scoot, and boogie. You know what I'm saying? All right, I'll do it this way. All right, so y'all ready? I think I'm ready. Let's do this. Can y'all hear MrBallen? Damn, I don't know why these headphones aren't working. I've tried every which way to plug them in. They just don't work. Lame. Super lame. Dumb as hell. I plugged it in and everything. Ridiculous. Whatever, y'all. Those things can F away. Okay, let's try this again. Let's try this again. We're going to have to do it the old fashioned way where I turn the volume on the freaking speaker thing to 1,000,000. All right. You ready for take two? You ready for take two? Let's do it.
In 2008, a young man was driving along a dirt road in a forest when he spotted up ahead this large, strange looking animal that he didn't recognize that appeared to be dead on the side of the road. And so, curious what it was, he drove past the dead animal and he stopped his car and he got out and began walking back up the road towards the animal to see what it was. And when he got right on top of it, he crouched down to get a better look. And as he did, he heard the sound of something moving behind him. And then before he could turn around, everything went black. But before we get into today's...
So, with the first story, I'll just warn you. I've already seen it because I tried to do this video already, and YouTube basically tried to suppress it and demonetized it and shut it down completely no matter what I did. So, I'm doing it for the live stream. I'm way behind. I know. You don't have to tell me. There's new MrBallen. There's more MrBallen. I already know this. I'm very aware. But unfortunately, there's so much I could do about it because YouTube sucks. I don't know what else to tell y'all. Okay, good enough.
Story. If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once or twice every week. So if that's of interest to you, please invite the like button to come on over your house for a nice, fun, casual game night. And as soon as they step inside, immediately ambush them, handcuff them to the bed, and have a priest perform an exorcism on them. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn...
I swear, the reason why they do a new, like he does a new thing every single time they address the like button, it's like a new victim in Dexter. It's like I imagine having a friend and they're all a different like button. And every time they do a prank, the like button either dies or runs away. So now there's a new like button. Like that'd be so evil. So evil. But that's how it seems to me.
Turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Parental advisory, SUL content.
In 2008,
still love MrBallen's intro.
22-year-old Julian Buchwald was living in a small rural town in southern Australia called Budgeree. He lived there with his parents, who owned a small house on a massive 1,200-acre plot of land, which for reference is about 2 square miles. However, this land was made up mostly of thick brush and forested areas, so for the most part, they just stayed close to their actual house. However, there was a waterfall deep into the woods on their property that periodically they would go to visit. Less than a 20-minute drive north of Budgeree was another small rural town called Churchill. And in that town was Julian's girlfriend, 17-year-old Carolyn Watson, who also lived with her parents.
Why is it always the handsome young man and pretty young women? It's always that way. I wonder why. Is it like a psychological thing for psychos and sickos? Because I already know about this story. But I'm going to let y'all like be the ones to tell me what you think. Because I'm sure some of y'all seen part 1 of this. Or you probably haven't. I've got mixed reviews on it. But yeah. Let me read the chat real quick. Brandon Peters. He's returned. Yay, and I can hear you. All lame. YouTube is frustrating. Yes, they are. Can't wait till I can set up something else. Raisley Ray, welcome to the live stream. Hello, I can hear you. Good. Thank you. Brandon Peters, it's Mr. B. Nice, but we can't hear him at all. Okay, I caught that earlier. Akasari. No, we can't. Dang. Today's technical difficulties with Blast Cap from Brandon 5 times. Yeah, true. Count Dankula has more stuff. One was especially interesting where a guy attempts to take over the world. We'll have to watch that another time. Brandon Peters, poor like button. Ain't that the truth? Brandon Peters, I want 2 miles of land. Actually, I want all the land. Bub, you can get like 30 or 40 acres down here in Texas for 18 grand. Seriously. For 18 grand. That's it. That's all. Just saying. Shelby Speaks. Great to see you back. Thank you, Shelby Speaks. Thank you. All right, y'all ready? Let's go back.
The young couple had met 2 years earlier at the church. They both...
Oh, damn. Mahala. Mahala. Be safe. Get away from the tornado. Take your four-wheeler and do a beeline out of the way. Stay safe, Mahala. Everybody else, tell Mahala stay safe.
Went to. They were both very devout Christians, and their plan was to get married the next year when Carolyn turned 18 and was done with her studies. On Tuesday, March 4th of that year, Julian and Carolyn decided to go out and have a picnic lunch at the waterfall on Julian's family's property. So early that afternoon, Julian left his house. He hopped in the family car. He drove north to Churchill. He picked up Carolyn, and then he drove her back to his family's property, where he turned onto a dirt road that would take them into the forest to the waterfall. At some point,
Okay, there's a lot of this I don't remember, so I'm just bullying my way through it. But I'm pretty sure they're unarmed. In Australia, I'm pretty sure that pew pews or bam bams are illegal. And I'm not talking about the big giant stick, toddler cave boy from Flintstones bam bams. I'm talking about bam bams. Pretty sure they're illegal in Australia, unless you're like law enforcement or military. So basically, traveling anywhere in Australia is a huge, dangerous gamble, at least to my brain. But y'all let me know what you think.
Along this short, bumpy road through the forest, Julian was looking out ahead of the car when he spotted what looked like roadkill on the side of the road. And this roadkill, it looked bigger than he was used to seeing in this area. And so he stared at it as the car kind of rolled past it. And right after they had driven past the roadkill, he turned to Carolyn and said, hey, there's some really weird roadkill on the side of the road right over there. And so Carolyn, who really didn't care, she kind of slowly looked up and turned around and looked, but she didn't see it. And then after that, the two of them did not discuss the roadkill any further. And so Julian just continued to drive along this dirt road until the road kind of opened up into this big clearing. And in the middle of this clearing, which was basically this field, there was a small pond with a 10-foot high waterfall feeding into it. This was the waterfall. And so Julian parked the car right at the end of the dirt road, right on the edge of this clearing. And he and Carolyn got out. They went around to the back of the car. They got their picnic supplies out of the trunk, and they set up their picnic lunch right on the edge of this pond, looking up at this waterfall. And they were there for about an hour, just kind of enjoying each other's company. And then around 2:30 p.m., they realized it was time to go because they had told their family they'd be back by 3.
So they're unarmed, most likely. They're definitely just, have an ignorant bliss about, the inherent dangers of the world. Like I've said before, complacency kills. Complacency easily kills. And the fact of the matter is, the majority of people on this planet live in an ignorant bliss. Ignorance is bliss. They're ignorant of how dangerous reality is, because in a way we're very much sheltered from reality, or at least the majority of people are. People like myself, like military, law enforcement, anyone who's had to consistently face danger is aware of a portion of reality that the majority of the population has not the slightest inkling of. And even when they hear about it, they ignore it because the mentality seems to be, oh, it's not going to happen here. But that's just stupidity, straight up stupidity. It seriously is. I don't, people can tell me I'm victim blaming all I want. Here's the problem. If you make yourself, like if you put yourself in the same situation as a dodo, if anyone remembers what happened to the dodo bird, if you make yourself a dodo bird, you're gonna go extinct. That's just a fact of reality. Unfortunately, so many people don't want to I guess own up to reality or something. People are too content, too comfortable. But things might change soon.
And so they packed up all of their picnic stuff. They went back to the car. They put it back in the trunk. They hopped back inside the car. Julian turned it on. He turned the car around, and they began driving back down the dirt road that had brought them in. And as soon as they began driving down this road, Julian remembered the strange roadkill he had seen on their way in. And he decided that he wanted to stop and get out and actually go up to it. And so as they're driving along, he looks over at Carolyn and says, "Hey, do you mind if I stop the car when I see the roadkill so I can go look at it?" Carolyn looked at him and she's like, "Okay, but remember, we have to be back by 3 p.m. That's what we told our families, so please be quick." And so Julian said, "No problem." And so he continued driving along, scanning for this roadkill. But after driving for several minutes, he had not found the roadkill yet. And he started to become worried that he had just driven past it without realizing it.
So here's a thing about roadkill not a lot of people know. If you're out in the wilderness of any kind and there's roadkill on the road, there's a high chance that some scavenger or even a predator, if they're hungry enough, is going to be attracted to that area because of the smell of dead animal, the smell of blood, the smell of meat. Okay? You have to carefully scope out an area. You have to carefully reconnoiter where that roadkill is. There's been people who've tried to go and scoop up roadkill. Next thing you know, a bear comes out of nowhere or a big cat. And even sometimes like wolves in some areas will be attracted to roadkill if they're traveling in the area of a road, or you'll get like excuse me, protein, or I'm trying to think of the smaller creatures, the coyotes. So coyotes, however you say it. Yeah, they're smaller than wolves, but if they have numbers, they will jump you. If they have enough numbers, they'll jump you. Even if you're bigger than them. If you fight back hard enough, then I'm sure you could probably drive them away. But all of that's too big of a risk for your regular person. It really is. It's way too big of a risk. So it's much better to see what's around, or just don't take the chance at all. Like the saying goes that everybody should be cognizant of, curiosity killed that cat.
And so he stopped the car. They're pretty close to the end of this dirt road. They're almost back to Julian's property. But He stops the car right in the middle of this dirt road, and he turns to Carolyn and says, "Hey, I think I drove past it. Do you mind if I just hop out and run back?" And so Carolyn was totally annoyed that this roadkill viewing was really becoming quite involved. But she says, "Okay, go. But again, you got to be quick because, it's almost 3 p.m." And so Julian kind of grinned at her. He put the car in park and he hopped out, he turned, and he began jogging back down the road in the direction of the waterfall. And after jogging for maybe 30 seconds or so, the road had turned to the right. And so from where he was on the road, if he turned around, he would not have been able to see his car or Carolyn. He was kind of deep in the thick of this forest. But he knew, this road is not very long. And so I'm sure the roadkill has got to be up here somewhere. And so he decided he would just continue running back along this road for maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. And if he didn't find the roadkill by then, he'd just have to give up, turn around, and head back to the car.
And he left his woman alone in the car. And he's going alone through wilderness in Australia, where everything is out to kill you. He's alone in the wilderness in Australia. And he left his woman alone in the car. You don't know who's out there. You don't know what's out there. You don't know what else could possibly happen. And you're unarmed. And you're poor, ignorant, and willing lambs to slaughter. Look, y'all, this kind of stuff it frustrates me to no end. It really does.
And so he began jogging, continuing towards the waterfall on this dirt road. And sure enough, after about a minute, he spots off to the side the roadkill. And so he runs up to it, and right away he sees it's this huge animal. It's right on the side of the road. There was a branch from a tree that had kind of obscured the carcass a little bit. And he figured that's why on the return trip he hadn't seen it, because this branch was kind of blocking it from view. And so standing over it, still not even sure what it is, he reached down and he moved the branch, the tree branch, out of the way to get a better look at this big dead animal. And right as he did that, everything went black. A few minutes later, Carolyn, who was still sitting in the car waiting for her boyfriend to come back, looked at her watch and realized it was getting really close to 3 p.m. and still Julian was not back yet. And so feeling kind of annoyed with him, she sat up in her seat and turned around and looked out the rear window of the car, expecting to see Julian come bounding down the road toward her. But when she looked out the back window, all she saw was this dirt road that kind of bent off to the right out of view and thick trees everywhere. Her boyfriend is nowhere to be seen. Annoyed, she turned back around and sat facing forward again, but began periodically looking in the side view mirror, expecting Julian to pop up at any moment. But after several more minutes went by and still Julian had not come back yet, her annoyance turned into concern. Was
Complacency kills.
Julian actually okay? And so she decided, it's almost 3 p.m. now. We got to get back. I need to get out and actually go investigate and see what's going on with Julian and this roadkill. And so she opened her car door. She stepped outside. She stood up. She turned and she looked down the road in the direction it turned to the right towards the waterfall. And she froze because there was something standing right in the middle of the road that her brain simply couldn't process. She wanted to turn and run. She wanted to scream for help, but she couldn't. She was just frozen with fear, staring at this thing in the middle of the road. And then seconds later, this thing that she saw in the road began moving toward her.
And that had to be the person that got Julian. That had to be the wild, crazy psychopath that got Julian. It had to be. Who else could it be?
Around 3:30 p.m. that day, Julian's mother, who was at the house, realized her son had still not come back from his picnic. And this was very unlike him. He was extremely punctual. And so she stepped out onto the front porch to wait for him. But after waiting on the front porch for 30 minutes and him not showing up again, she got really concerned. And so she left the porch and went down onto their driveway. And their driveway extended right up to the main road that ran along the front of the house. And when she reached the top of her driveway, she just turned and watched down the main road, waiting for her son to come back. Because in order to get to the waterfall, you had to get on this main road and then turn onto that dirt road that was a little ways down this main road. And so she's just standing there looking down the road, waiting for her son, but he's still not coming out of that dirt road. And as she's looking in this direction, she happens to glance along the chain link fence that ran along the front of her property. And she noticed there was a plastic bottle that had been jammed through one of the chain links. And so she decided she would just go over and see what it was, because it didn't make any sense that there would be a bottle in her fence.
Okay. That is horrible. Let me fix this. Technical difficulties, folks. I've got terrible lighting. I don't know what to tell anybody. Terrible lighting. Terrible. Apologies. I look like I got a fake tan. Oh well. But a plastic bottle? Seriously? Seriously? How do you just randomly notice a plastic bottle in a fence? Or maybe it was placed in a conspicuous spot and the fence is usually spotless. Maybe. I don't know.
So she walks over, she pulls the bottle out of the fence, and she realizes there is a tightly rolled piece of paper that's inside of the bottle. And so she unscrews the cap.
A message in a bottle. Of course. Of course.
She turns the bottle over and she pours this little piece of paper out. She unfurls the piece of paper and sees there's writing on it. And as she's reading it, her heart starts to race and she covers her mouth. This note was clearly intended for her to read, or someone in the family to read that day, because it was about what happened to Julian and Carolyn that day. The note, which was covered in all these strange satanic symbols and was barely understandable because the grammar and spelling was so terrible, it generally communicated that Julian and Carolyn, who they called the boy and the girl, had been kidnapped. And so long as the family did not contact police, they, the boy and the girl, Julian and Carolyn, would be returned. It didn't really specify what they were going to do to them, and there was no ransom. It basically just said, you better not tell police or else. Well, Julian's mother was terrified. She had no idea what to do. And despite this threat of some sort of harm to her children, to her family, if she went to police, she still called the police. And so the police, they came out to her property, they inspected the note, and right away, they noticed at the bottom of the note, it was signed with the initials O-N-A. And so those initials, combined with these strange satanic symbols all over it, led police to discover who O-N-A was. ONA was a cult. It was the Order of Nine Angles, and they are a self-professed satanic cult that operates primarily in Europe, but also has chapters in the United States, in Canada, in Russia, and also in Australia. This cult believes that Christians are the enemy of the world, and they need to be destroyed in order to institute a militaristic new world order they called the Imperium. And
of course it's a cult. Of course. Of course. Sounds like a cult of people that weren't able to put the blocks in the right spot. Oh, I'm so terrible. I'm so terrible. blame my dark military humor or something. I don't know. Of course it's a cult. Of course. They're probably the ones where they were given the box and try to hammer the freaking circle into the square or something. Like, people are gonna people, I guess.
If that wasn't frightening enough, this cult openly advocates for and apparently practices human sacrifice. They have come out and said the people they kill in these sacrifices are people they consider lesser thans, basically the bad people of society. And
so they're leftists. Great. Even worse, they're leftist cultists. Well, the dominoes are just stacking up at this point. We're not even trying to make a shape with them to tumble anymore. They're just stacking on top of each other. Like, come on now.
And if you are an ONA cult member, then who better to sacrifice than Julian and Carolyn, two devout Christians, and so two clear enemies of the ONA. Now, at first, when the police saw this note and kind of put this together, they're thinking this has got to be a prank. I mean, Carolyn and Julian have only been gone for a couple of hours at this point, and all we have is this note in a bottle stuck into the fence. This does not seem like some huge conspiracy of a cult coming in here and snatching these kids to commit some human sacrifice. But when Carolyn's parents found out about this note and how they were still missing, they would tell the police 10 days ago, we received a letter in the mail that had strange satanic symbols all over it, and it really didn't make any sense. It basically was threatening them not to go to police, but 10 days ago, they had no reason to go to police. And so they just didn't really understand why they received this message or who had sent it. And so they had just kind of dismissed it and not told anyone. But now, with these two notes looking nearly identical, it seemed fairly obvious that whether it was the ONA or some other person or group, whoever was behind the kidnapping of Julian and Carolyn had clearly been watching both of their properties prior to the attack.
Okay. So you get a note from somebody obviously crazy and you don't report it. What? What? You obviously got a note from a crazy person, a crazy, group of individuals, and you don't report it. Are you dumb or are you stupid? Dumb or are you stupid? Complacency kills. That is a fact. Complacency kills. Let me read the chat real quick. Okay. Shelby speaks. Australia, emo guns. Yeah, the great emo war that Australia lost against a flock of birds. Brandon Peters twice. I guess you would carry a sword like my sword would slice in too. Plus an axe for firewood and other stuff I'd definitely take. Yeah. Take something. Brandon Peters. Emo guns. Laugh out loud. That's a good one, Shelby. Shelby speaks twice. Bad planning like F. Indeed. Shelby speaks. Privileged environments create nonsensible people who do things like this. Yep. Brandon Peters. The boyfriend is a crazy guy. Also, roadkill is real bad. Don't eat it unless you have to. Facts. Marvel Block Stan. What's up, my man? MrBallen now, how have you been? I've been okay. I'm moving fairly soon. And YouTube just allowed me to come back, so there's that. Shelby speaks. Reminds me of Red Dead 2, where the coyotes used to jump you at night in the game. I haven't played Red Dead in forever. I played it for like 2 days and got bored immediately. Brandon Peters. This is horror movie level of decisions. Dumb people. Indeed. Indeed. Brandon Peters 4 times. Cool. It wouldn't be Blast Cap without technical difficulties. Ain't that the truth? Also, I would definitely notice if there was a bottle in my fence. The Cult of Shapes. 9 angles. Marble Blocks Dan, laughing out loud emoji. Brandon Peters 4 times. Really? They're going to create an imperium like an empire of man? I doubt that would ever happen. It shows you how crazy and delusional they are. We're all too different. Brandon Peters, that's not what lefties want. Laugh out loud, but whatever. It's what leftists. You gotta make that distinction, my man. There's a difference between leftists, lefties, centrists, righties, and extreme right wingers. There's a difference between all those different types. Leftists are like extreme left, every single one of them. Lefties are like your regular liberal-ish types, right? And then centrists is like majority of people, where they got a conglomeration of everything that they take from all sides. And then obviously like the right, and then the farther right, whatever. Where on the farther right you get like anarchists and stuff like that. Brandon Peters. Internet. Indeed, internet. Brandon Peters. Man, I totally reported immediately. Yes, smart. Very smart. All right, let's go.
Which meant this was likely a more sophisticated kidnapping than it seemed. So that evening, the police launched this huge air and land search all over Julian's family's property. But despite looking everywhere, they found no sign of the young couple. There was just nothing. And over the next few days, when still there was just no sign of Julian or Carolyn, and there was no more word coming in from O&A, there were no more bottles stuck in fences or stuck in mailboxes, the police began to prepare for the worst. Then something totally unexpected happened. On March 11th, so 7 days after Carolyn and Julian went missing, a farmer was driving along this winding back road up in the mountains right near Alpine National Park. Alpine National Park is this very rugged, mountainous place that's about 250 miles to the north of Budgery. And so as this guy is driving along this road, which is very heavily forested on either side, he sees up ahead this young man and young woman who are barely wearing any clothes come stumbling out of the forest and kind of plop down on the side of the road. And so concerned they're hurt or they're lost or something, the farmer rolled right up next to them and he rolled his window down and asked, hey, are you guys okay? And they got up and they kind of stumbled their way over to the car and they introduced themselves as Carolyn and Julian, and they pleaded for his help. And so the farmer helped them into his car and he drove them to the hospital.
They're alive? Well, hallelujah. And, freaking Easter eggs in a basket, they're alive. Huh. Oh, but I can only imagine the kind of stuff they've been through, though. They're probably completely traumatized. However, their relationship is probably strong as freaking steel right now.
It wasn't long before the police in Budgery learned that Carolyn and Julian had been found and they were alive. And so very quickly, they rushed up to that hospital near the national park. And when they got there, they spoke to doctors who would say, Carolyn and Julian are very traumatized. They're horribly sunburned. They're covered in bug bites. They got cuts and bruises all over them, but they're okay. They're going to survive. And so the police went into Julian and Carolyn's room. And at first, they just talked to them for a couple of minutes to really see that they were okay. And after feeling pretty confident that they were, they said, look, I don't mean to just jump right into the trauma you just experienced, but we really need any information you can give us about what just happened. Who did this to you? Who brought you out here? Because if it's ONA and they're out in the Alpine National Park, we need to know about it. We need to get out there and we need to stop them. And so Julian and Carolyn would both independently sit down and tell the police what happened to them. And so the following is the combined story of these two accounts that they gave police. But before we get into that, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Current. Banking is one of the few industries that has yet to be modernized by technology. It's dominated by a bunch of old companies that would happily take you out on a nice seafood dinner and never call you again. But with Current, which is the future of money management, you'd get that call back, and they'll even give you 7 days or. And so again, here is the account that both Julian and Carolyn gave to police. 7 days earlier, when Julian had gotten out of the car and ran back down the road to that dead animal on the side of the road, and he had reached down to kind of get that branch out of the way to get a better look at this thing, he heard sudden movement behind him, and as he turned, he didn't have a chance to see what was behind him, but he felt something hard smash him in the back of the head, and it knocked him unconscious. When he woke up, he knew right away that a significant amount of time had passed, that he had been unconscious for what must have been several hours, because now it was dark out, and when he was struck, it was broad daylight, and he looked around him and he had no idea where he was. He was in the middle of this forest. He had no clothes on. His wrists and his ankles were tied together, and he moved around and he realized he had been tied to a tree that was right behind him. And so he's got no idea what's going on. He has no idea where he is. He's looking around. He doesn't see anyone. And then amazingly, when he looks down, right next to him, underneath some leaves, is a knife. And so he's thinking, how in the world is there a knife right next to me? This almost seems like it was placed to be here for me. But either way, he reached down with his hands, he picks this knife up, and he's able to cut the restraints off of his ankles, and then he's able to cut the restraints off of his waist, and then he stands up, and he's able to kind of cut off the ones on his wrist, and then he's free. And so he takes this knife, and he has no idea where he's going, but he needs to get away. He doesn't know if whoever brought him here is going to come back. And so he just picks a direction, and he starts running.
Okay, I got quite a few questions here. Why would there be a knife just laying there, right? Obviously, they were kidnapped for a reason. Obviously, they were bound for a reason. Why would the kidnappers just leave an escape tool nearby? Let's think on this. The only thing I could think of is that there's probably somebody in the group who is trapped in the cult, can't escape the cult for whatever reason, but decides to help these two and do at least a small good deed because they feel bad about what the group they're trapped in is doing. That's a possibility. Second possibility is that the cult realized that they've opened up a hornet's nest and they're not going to be able to handle the heat that's going to come down their necks with keeping these two. And if they unalive them, then it'll be even worse for them. So instead, they decide to allow them both to escape. Or there's a more insidious plot in the works. Something else caused events to happen to where the knife was left there for him for some other reason. Let me know what y'all think.
Shortly after Julian had been struck in the back of the head after looking at that dead animal carcass, Carolyn was still sitting in the car and she was starting to get annoyed and kind of worried about Julian. And so she gets out of the car, she stands up, she turns, and she looks down the dirt road where it kind of bends off to the right. And standing in the road, maybe 10 feet away from her, is this man wearing all black. He's got a black balaclava over his face, and he's looking right at her. And so she's so scared, she just frozen to the spot. And then this guy charges her, he tackles her to the ground. And then once she's on the ground, he rips all her clothes off and then binds her wrists, her ankles. He ties them together so she's hogtied. And then he puts a blindfold around her eyes. And so she's lying on the road. She can't move. She can't see anything. And she hears her attacker run off down the road. And then a couple of minutes later, she hears a car approaching and it stops right near her. And then she hears the sound of a car door opening, someone walking up to her, and then they pick her up and they put her in the trunk of this car. They shut the trunk, and then the car kicks into gear and it starts driving away. And so for hours and hours, she lay in the trunk in this horrible position where the circulation to her wrists and to her ankles were cut off. And so she's getting shooting pain in her limbs, and it's totally uncomfortable. And then after several hours, the car eventually turns on to some really bumpy road, and then it comes to a stop.
All of this grief, all of this pain, all of this suffering, this whole situation could have been avoided. It could have been avoided if they both had weapons, were both cognizant, and were not complacent. Man. This stuff exhausts me. Seriously, and my frustration level is always over 9,000 with this stuff. Always.
And then she hears the sound of the driver open the door. They walk around to the back of the car. The trunk pops open. And then this person pulls the blindfold off of her eyes. And she sees, even though her eyes are taking a second to adjust, that it's the man with the balaclava on. And he picks her up and he throws her on the ground. And then after he shuts the trunk, he walks over to Carolyn and he grabs her by the wrists and he begins dragging her into the woods. And so as she's being dragged, Carolyn is thinking, I'm about to be killed somewhere in the middle of the woods. There's nothing I can do. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. And after several minutes of being dragged, she gets dropped. And then this man with the balaclava, he walks back to the car and he gets a shovel. And when he walks over to her, he makes a special point of showing her the shovel. And then he rolls her onto her side so she's positioned in such a way that she can see what he's doing. And then right in front of her, he takes that shovel and he begins digging a hole in the ground. And so Carolyn's watching him and she's thinking, he's digging my grave. And so for several hours, Carolyn just laid there wondering what was going to happen to her as this guy dug this hole deeper and deeper into the ground. And then finally, when the hole was apparently deep enough, the guy got out of the hole, he dumped the shovel, he walked over to her, he picked her up, and he threw her into the hole. And so Carolyn at this point is literally anticipating death at any moment. She doesn't know how he's going to kill her, but she thinks it's going to happen any minute. And so she wriggles herself onto her knees and does the only thing she can think to do, which is just to pray. And so as she's sitting there kneeling and praying, she hears the sound of her attacker walking off. Now, the hole was deep enough that she actually could not see where he was going, but she could clearly tell he was walking away. It was almost like her prayer had been answered, that this guy was going to leave her alone. But even with this guy potentially gone, she was still in a perilous situation because she's stuck in this hole. She can't go anywhere. She's still tied up, and the temperatures are dropping rapidly, and she's got no clothes on. After Julian had managed to free himself from his restraints with that knife that he found, and after he had turned and just started running in a general direction, he had begun yelling out for help. He knew that by yelling out, he very likely could be alerting the person who had brought him here, but he's thinking, it's freezing, I don't have clothes on, I have to get help right now. And
don't tell me he miraculously just came across her when they're like brought to two random locations. Then again, the other kidnapper just dropping her in a hole but not burying her or unaliving her or anything, doing anything to prevent her escaping at all. This is a real head scratcher. Either these guys are really actually the worst kidnappers ever, or there was some other plan. I don't know, y'all. I don't know. This boggles my brain.
Maybe Carolyn is out there. And so he's just kind of yelling out for help. And at some point, a voice yells back to him, and it's a voice he knows very well. It's Carolyn. And so in the darkness, he's kind of fumbling through all the trees, and he's listening for Carolyn's voice. And finally, he reaches her, and he finds her in this hole, hogtied, screaming out for him.
What? 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 Okay, so he was taken not too far away from her somehow. They find each other in, like, basically the same area. And just this boggles my mind, y'all. This boggles my mind so hard.
And so there's this moment where he kind of explains what happened to him, and she's trying to explain what happened to her, but they're just so scared that this attacker is going to come back that Julian just hops into the hole, he cuts her restraints, and then Julian helps Carolyn out of the hole. And at this point, Carolyn can barely walk because the circulation had been cut off, for the most part, to her legs for the better part of 6, 7, 8 hours at this point. But still, they're desperate to get out of here, so Julian's kind of holding Carolyn up, and they begin to walk away from this hole site. And as they're leaving, they begin scanning around the area in case, this attacker has left something else on the ground, because Julian had said, I found a knife near where I was being held. And sure enough, as they're leaving, not far from the hole, they spot lying up against a tree a sleeping bag, and rolled up inside of the sleeping bag was some food and some water. And so Julian and Carolyn, they can't understand how in the world this has happened. Both the horrible luck of being kidnapped and brought out here, and the unbelievable luck of finding life-saving supplies just laying nearby. But either way, they grab the sleeping bag, they grab the food and water, and they take off running. For the next 40...
What in the Sam hell is happening here? Like, they get kidnapped, they get separated, they both get bound, but they both are left near each other. They're both, one of them's allowed to escape and rescue the other. There's a random sleeping bag that'll help them. There's food supplies and water and stuff that will help them survive. What the hell is happening here? It sounds like a really horrible plot for a movie, like a cheesy C-rated movie. Like, the only thing I could think of that would actually cap this out is if they were, like, allowed to escape. All this was set up. They were allowed to get the supplies in the sleeping bag and get away for a while. And then they got recaptured again while they slept somewhere. And then just tied up and bound again and put in the exact same situation. That would cap this out perfectly, because that's psychological, like that's like incurring psychological trauma, right? Like breaking hope, breaking will. It's not too dissimilar from the kind of stuff they did at Sage. But if that doesn't happen, well, like, what the hell is happening?
48 hours, the couple roasted during the daytime when the sun was out, because the temperatures would climb significantly. There wasn't much shade where they were walking around, so they're getting horribly sunburned. And then at night, the temperatures would plummet, and they'd be freezing cold, and they'd get inside of their one sleeping bag, and they'd shiver together and do their best to ration some food and water. And they're telling themselves, to stay positive, that eventually, if they just keep on moving every day, they're going to find a person, they're going to find a road, they're going to find something that will save them. But To their horror, at the end of those first 48 hours, as they're stumbling through this mountainous, treacherous terrain, they found themselves stumbling back into the same area they had tried to run away from. There was the hole in the ground where Carolyn had been thrown inside of. They had accidentally, over the past 2 days, walked in a big circle. Now, luckily, when they arrived back at the site, there was no one there. The attacker was long gone, and it would turn out this accident likely saved their lives, because as they looked at this site, they saw propped up against a tree was a backpack. And so they ran over to the backpack, they opened it up, and there was food, water, some clothing, and a map of the area. Now, again, the couple is totally dumbfounded why they are just happening to find these life-saving supplies right when they need them.
Okay, is this the kidnappers? Is it the kidnappers that's leaving all this stuff around? Or is it some poor fools that went off into the woods hiking by themselves or something, and the kidnappers took them and left their stuff? So maybe the kidnappers were too busy with other people that just happened to stumble into their, like, I don't know, kidnap zone, torture area, something. Like, I have no idea what's going on here. I'm as dumbfounded as they are in this story. Let me read the chat real fast. Real awesome guy. The reason I haven't been able to chat on your Twitch live streams is because it says verify phone number only, but I can't verify my number. Why can't you verify your number, my man? Why can't you do that? Brandon Peters 3 times. Saying hi to Real Awesome Guy twice. Laugh Out Loud Internet. Real Awesome Guy. Also, I got banned from Twitch for saying F. Well, then just say F and not the rest of the word. Real Awesome Guy. Only for 7 days. Brandon Peters 4 times. Nice kidnappers. Yay! The world's most dangerous game. I'll bet. Brandon Peters. Blastcap. Do you listen to podcasts? Yes, I do. Brandon Peters, Kidnap Zone, Laugh Out Loud. Right?
But at the same time, they're thinking, okay, well, if these supplies are sitting here, then certainly the person who has left them here, their attacker, they're going to be back soon. And so they just grabbed the backpack with everything inside of it, and they took off running. And for the next 5 days, they used that map as best as they could, and they eventually stumbled their way through the terrain, roasting during the daytime and freezing at night. And eventually, they reached that road where they stumbled out, and the farmer driving along the back road, he spotted them, and he brought them to the hospital. After hearing this story, the police very quickly organized a massive search around the area of Alpine National Park where the farmer picked up Julian and Carolyn, because they're thinking, okay, it's got to be right around here that we'll find the man in the balaclava that might lead us to the ONA, or maybe he's not connected to the ONA, but whoever he is, we need to find this guy. And so the police, they go out, they do this huge search. They don't find the man with the balaclava. They don't find any sign of the ONA, but they do find that area where that hole had been dug that Carolyn had been thrown in. And when they searched that area, they found the shovel, they found some rope, and they found some duct tape. And when they brought that in to be examined, they couldn't believe what they discovered. All of those items belonged to Julian, which meant either the kidnapper had taken all of these supplies from Julian right before going out and perpetrating this kidnapping, or, much more likely, Julian had supplied these things to the kidnapper and so was involved in some way in this kidnapping. And so the police went to Julian and confronted him with this information and said, "You're not telling us everything because these are your items." And at first, Julian would completely deny any accusations that he had anything to.
What? You know what? Actually, this shouldn't be that unbelievable because we all know who Jussie Smollett is, right? He faked his own, hate crime to try to get attention and stuff. So this shouldn't be a surprise. This really shouldn't be a surprise. Still, it is a bit of a plot twist, right?
Do with this. But after some very serious police pressure was put on him, he cracked. The following is the real story of what happened. Back on March 4th, so the day that Julian and Carolyn went missing, Julian, after picking Carolyn up, they made it onto that dirt road that led into the forest towards the waterfall. And as they're driving along, Julian claimed to have seen some roadkill, some very strange roadkill on the side of the road. And so when Carolyn kind of turned around to look and didn't see it, Julian made it seem like, oh, well, we drove past it. That's why you didn't see it. But in reality, there was never any roadkill. That was completely...
You know what? I'm going to put this forward right now. Maybe if Julian did this, he was trying to get money from their parents for him and her. And he probably had an accomplice who was like bringing supplies into the woods and stuff. Maybe he was trying to get money from their parents for the ransom, for the kidnapping. Maybe. But then why like allow them to do the whole escape thing? Was he trying to like, you know, play the hero and make up this scenario to like, you know, be in better standing with his girl and their parents or something? I don't know. There's too many possibilities for this.
Made up. There was no roadkill. All Julian was doing was creating something that would allow him to then get out of the car at the end of their trip. And so they drive the rest of the way into the waterfall. They have their picnic. They turn around. They head back. And then again, Julian says, hey, Carolyn, do you mind if I, get out to look at the roadkill? And so she says yes. And then he acts like, oh, we must have driven past it, so I need to get out and run back if I want to go see it. So Carolyn, she's not thinking it's totally strange. She says, okay. And so he hops out and he runs his way. He goes around that curve in the road, out of sight. There's no roadkill. Instead, he makes his way to a tree where days earlier he had stashed his all-black outfit, his black balaclava, and his knife, his shovel, his rope, his duct tape. It was all stashed in this spot that was going to be out of view of where Carolyn was. And so after getting all dressed up, he turned and began walking back towards Carolyn and his car. And when he turned the corner, he saw Carolyn was already standing outside of the car. And so he charged her, he tackled her to the ground, he ripped her clothes off, he hog-tied her, he threw her in his car, and then he got all of his supplies. He threw those in the car too, and he began driving away. And for 6 hours, he drove north all the way up to Alpine National Park. And then when he got there, he found a road that would kind of go off the trail a ways into the forest, at which point he opened the trunk, he pulled Carolyn out, he threw her on the ground, he dragged Carolyn into the woods, and then with her blindfold off, he made sure to show her the shovel, and he began digging that hole to give her the impression that he was going to kill her and bury her. He really wanted her to be totally terrified. And then after he had dug this hole, he dumped her into the hole. And then when she couldn't see what he was doing because she's deep inside of this hole and she's all tied up, he ran away. And when he was far enough out of view, he took off all of his clothes and kind of stashed it near a tree. And then completely naked, besides his knife, which would be his alibi for how he had gotten free, he began moving back towards the site where he knew Carolyn was in this hole. And then after waiting a little bit, he began yelling out for help. And then she heard it. And so she yells back to him, "No, Julian, I'm over here."
This dude's nuts. Straight up nuts. I can't wait to hear what the reasoning for all of this was. Like, this is some like freaking way so far off the spectrum. It's not on the scale anymore. Kind of crazy.
And so Julian goes to the sound of her voice. And then when he sees her, he pitches her this ridiculous story about how he was tied up over there, but he found this knife and he was able to cut himself free. And look, I'll cut you free. Oh, the attacker's going to come back soon. And so he helps her out of the hole. And oh, look, they left a sleeping bag and some food and water. Let's go. And so he grabs the supplies and they head off into the bush. Now, the whole time over the course of these 7 days, Julian knew exactly where he was. And so when they accidentally went in a circle and arrived back at the site where the hole was and then found that backpack that had more food and more water and some more supplies, that was intentional. That was not an accident.
So basically, the whole time he was just guiding them around in a circle in the same area on purpose.
Left the backpack there, and so that's why they doubled back. And then 5 days later, after scampering through the wilderness, they magically found the road. But again, Julian knew where the road was. He had intentionally stayed out for the days that they were out there. And so after Julian tells the police all this, they say to him, was Carolyn in on this? I mean, did she know this was going on? And he said, no, the whole time she believed they were getting stalked by their attacker. And if they ever caught up to them, they would be killed. And so the police are like, okay, well, why did you do this? Julian would say, he and Carolyn were both very committed to their faith, and they both believed in not having sex before marriage. But over time, Julian had gotten to the point where he just couldn't wait any longer to have sex with Carolyn, and they weren't scheduled to get married for another year. He just did not think he could wait a full year before they could finally have intercourse. And so he had staged this entire kidnapping in order to hopefully coerce Carolyn into having sex with him.
Are you kidding me? That's it. That's all. That's the reason. Straight up desperate insanity. All because he couldn't keep himself in check. All because he couldn't keep the switch off. All because Dingle Dangle was his real brain.
And so while he and Carolyn were out on the run in Alpine National Park for those 7 days and nights, they were not wearing any clothes or barely wearing any clothes. And at night, they only had that one sleeping bag that Julian had intentionally staged in advance. He knew they would have that one sleeping bag. And so they would climb into that bag at night because it's freezing cold out. And as they're laying there right on top of each other, he would say to Carolyn, we need to have sex in order to produce enough heat that we don't freeze to death out here. But Carolyn, despite the circumstances, every time said no. And so after 7 days of trying to convince Carolyn that they had to have sex, it was a matter of life or death, and that if they just said their vows, that under the eyes of God, they would be considered married and sex would be okay at that point, despite all of his best efforts, every single time, Carolyn just continued to say, no, no.
You know what? Canonize that girl. Seriously. Catholic Church, canonize her. She's a freaking saint. Comparative to like the majority of modern women today, she's a freaking saint. Like, seriously. Seriously. Canonize this woman. She was so dead set and so determined and had the constitution, will, and fortitude to say no, no matter what else. That's freaking. You know how I talk about like I talk about like a needle in a haystack. You know what I'm saying? She's not a needle in a haystack. She's like a freaking she's like a diamond that's worth quadrillions that's inside that haystack. This woman's a saint in my book. Seriously. Absolutely seriously.
No. And so at the end of those 7 days, Julian finally just gave up. And so that's when they magically made their way out to the road and were rescued. Julian would also tell police that he was the one who wrote those notes prior to the kidnapping in hopes that they would believe the Order of the Nine Angles was behind all of this and he wouldn't get in trouble. Prior to his trial for kidnapping, Julian was out on bail and he decided he would just try to flee Australia. And so the way he did this is he dyed his skin a darker shade. He also dyed his hair darker. And then he attempted to use a fake Indian passport to go to India. And he was able to fool Australian authorities. But when he arrived in India, he was immediately found out and he was extradited back to Australia where he would stand trial. And in 2009,
This dude is a straight loser. A loser in every conceivable way. Every conceivable way.
he was found guilty of kidnapping along with a host of other obscure charges, and he was sentenced to 7 years and 9 months in prison. So that
And he's freaking smiling. Look at that. That is a punchable smile right there. Like, if I saw this dude and he was giving me that smirk, I'd either turn, walk the other way, and be like, nope, not happening. That dude's bad. Or, you know, if I'm in the mood, there's going to be some smackdown. You know what I'm saying? Serious smackdown. There was no justice served to him. 7 years? 7 years? That's it? Give him 20 at least. At least 20. Bub.
That's going to do it. If you got something out of today's episode and you haven't done this already, please invite the like.
All right, there we go, folks. MrBallen, the worst kidnappers in Australia. The worst kidnapper in Australia. Oh, man. Oh, yeah. Before I forgetty the Piscetti, where is that thingy, my bob? Where is that thingy, my bob? I'm trying to fix it. It's not letting me. Brother. Anyway, why is that not showing up, though? Maybe I should put it in white. Oh, there we go. There we go. I don't know if y'all can read that, but it says, thank you to the channel members, Steve Hughes, Ambiguousopia, and the Yabbick. Thank y'all for being channel members still to this day. I know you're probably not on the live stream right now, but thank you all the same. If you want to support the channel directly, so I don't have to worry about copyright or monetization or selling my soul to get that extra from doing all this, please click the link that's in the chat. Still, it's in the chat, top of the chat. Click that link, become a channel member. It's only once a month. It's a small amount, basically nothing, so that you can help support this channel and help me to keep doing crazy stuff. But yeah, let me read the chat real fast. Okay, Brandon Peters, all the way down. There's a podcast I listen to about the Kentucky Cannibal. It's the Chilluminati podcast, and the Kentucky Cannibal is crazy and funny. I'll put the first episode of it in the Discord. All right, thank you. I'll get to it when I can. Brandon Peters, crazy boyfriend. Brandon Peters, give the boyfriend the chair. What a nut. Yes, indeed. A nut. Absolute nut. Brandon Peters, he's so nutty. It's over 9,000. It's over 9,000. Brandon Peters, he should have just gone online to find stuff to occupy his time. Geez, what a loser. Indeed. An extreme loser in every single way conceivable. That's the type of man you don't want to be. Brandon Peters, I had spaghetti for dinner. It was tasty. Oh, man, I miss spaghetti. I miss spaghetti. I love spaghetti. I miss it. I miss my pastas, my spaghettis, my tortellini. I miss all that stuff. I miss it so bad. Mario Block Stan, you must be enjoying the extra 180 a year. Actually, it's less. It's much less than that. At least the last time I looked at it, it was much less. Because they're all doing like the smallest subscription. I think I'd have to check that actually. I don't remember what the exact. I don't remember what. I know it said it really low. Let me see. Okay, so now it's only Steve Hughes and the Yabik that are channel members. I think Ambiguous Opia is off the channel now for some reason. Let me see. Yeah, Ambiguous Opia canceled his membership. Let's see. Where's the total thingy? So far on the channel, I've made $5. $5.08. That's it. That's all. That's literally all. My RPM is like 43 cents. So I'm gonna have to fix that thing because Ambiguous Opia is not there anymore. So let me correct it real quick because Ambiguous Opia canceled. Sorry, Ambiguous Opia. I know I've been absent for a while, but YouTube took me down for a minute. I can't help what YouTube does. So now it's just Steve Hughes and the Yabik. Thank y'all very much for still being members of the channel, even though the channel's basically going nowhere. So yeah. Let's see. Marblock Stan. Oh, YouTube probably snatches some of it. Whoa, big boy. Yeah. I'm making nothing from the channel at all, except for except for what Steve Hughes and the Yabik still contribute to the channel. I think it's like $2 or something. It's like $2 and some cents or whatever, and that's it. That's all. So yeah, there y'all have it. All right, y'all. This has been fun, but I'm gonna go and cool off a little bit. So yeah, like I said earlier, if y'all want to support the channel, the link is in the description box down below. Also, there's a join button behind the subscribe button on every single video on YouTube. So if you click that, you can join there. There's also one in the chat that says, want to support the channel? Want to give me dinero? Click the link, and the link is right there. Also, you want guaranteed notifications of when I'm live, and you don't have to worry about YouTube not sending out notifications. Join the Discord. It's in the top of the chat. The link is right there. It's only good for like 72 hours or something. So jump in while you can. And then minds.com. Minds.com is a really good alternative to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, honestly. And they don't take your data. They don't track you or nothing. And you're the one that generates what you want to see on your feed, your story, and everything you're interested in. And you can pick and choose. And they don't just sell you ads or nothing. Also, you can earn tokens. So if you make content on Minds and you spread it around, you make some tokens. Those are exchangeable for cryptocurrency. So yeah, there you have it. And then also, I will be on Twitch. Let me show y'all the Twitch. All right, this is the Twitch. So The link is also in the description box. It is also in the chat. And all you need to do when you get to this screen is instead of gift a sub, it'll say follow. It's free. You don't have to do nothing else. Just click follow, click notification. It's the heart. It's a little heart button, and it's next to follow, usually over here, and it's free. All you gotta do is just verify yourself, and that's about it. But I will be on there later, chilling with the boys, playing some games, having some fun. You know the deal. So, yes. Mario Block Stan. Maybe that old saying was right. More hair, more money to share. Not true. Not true at all. All right, y'all. Well, this has been fun. Like I've said before, all those other things are in the chat or in the description box of the video of the live stream when it gets like uploaded later. So yeah, I'm gonna try to do these when I can. I'm moving pretty soon also, so I'll have a whole new setup soon. Also, I'm going to be working on trying to come up with the ideas for a mini series. So I've got a guy who's really good with like cinematography and video editing and all that kind of stuff. He's pretty on board with the ideas. He's also going to be guesting. He's going to be a guest on the live stream here pretty soon. I look forward to that, and he's going to share with us his story about men who go through divorce. Y'all already know my story, so he's going to share his, and we're going to talk a bit about that and about ideas for what we're going to do with each of our respective channels later on. So look forward to that. All right, y'all, you know what time it is. You like the live stream, you like me, you like MrBallen, then please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Then hit the real subscribe button called notification bell so as you get videos when I post them up. Or join the Discord so you get guaranteed notifications because they are always posted in the Discord every single time I go live on anything or do anything else. And on top of that, I'll end it like I usually do. Be good. Be as good as you can be. There's enough hurt and suffering and bad stuff in the world. We don't need to add to it. There's already enough of it. So be the best person you can. And be safe. Don't compromise safety and security. Not now, not ever. If you live in a place that makes you compromise safety and security, leave that place. Leave that place, move somewhere better. Like Texas. I live in Texas, so I know all about it. And if you work in a place that makes you compromise your safety and security and leads you like a lamb to slaughter, makes you a soft target for some crazy maniac that got weapons under suspicious circumstances, leave that place of work. Leave that place of work. Seriously. And then make a good life for yourselves. As good as you can. We don't know what's going to happen in the next day, week, month, year. We don't know. So make the best of it that you can right now. That being said, I will see y'all in the next one. Blast Cat Badger